Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Maitri and I'm very passionate about develops and I'm learning to be a better GM, a better player and a better person. And I want to share with you some of the cool stuff that I've been learning. Today I want to talk to you about something that I feel like is fairly simple that can make a pretty big difference to your D&D table, really any table, but D&D specifically is what we're talking about today. Monsters that your players don't already know inside and out. That's really the value of like an awesome bestiary or even tables that help you kind of build custom monsters is that you can surprise your players with what comes to be the aggressor. And if you've been here before, you will know that simplicity is my jam. Because I want a certain experience at my table, but I also don't want to put in like a ton of work. So, that there's that old like work saying, I think it's Bill Gates that gets attributed. Like, give your most complicated task to your laziest people and they will find the quickest way to get it done. I'm that laziest person. So, in the case of D&D, I'm really not here for like scouring a million fucking splat books or like third-party stuff. Like, I want to show you some cool stuff that exists right in the monster manual that I think can kind of work wonders at your table. They're super easy to slot into a game and still give that wait what kind of moment. So really, I recommend these. Number 1, Grick. This one is kind of a sleeper. Like, the Grick is super quiet, they're camouflage, and super deadly in the right terrain. And it's not flashy, so that's why I think it kind of gets, like, skipped over. But the fact that it's so unflashy is kind of what makes it so deadly. It's basically an ambush predator. The deadliness comes from the fact that they are super hard to sneak up on, especially because it's already hidden, so you don't even know you're supposed to be looking for it. In fact, they have probably already grokked your party's approach before your party even realizes. It's not supposed to be flashy, it's supposed to be sudden and a surprise. So stick it in a cave or like let your players walk into it when they're, like it's a trap that they didn't even realize was a trap. It's basically a dungeon or a traveling ambush that doesn't really need moving parts. I put it in the path of my players, my party, when they were traveling like a pretty foresty wooded area where all nature kind of starts to look the same after a while. And I found that D&D mechanics, the combats really kind of sing with the action economy, managed more than other elements. So you're gonna want at least 2 of these. If it's meant to be a tough encounter, you probably want just like 1 less than the group of the party. So if you have 4 people in your party, you want 3. If you have 5, you want 4, so on. But at least 2. Number 2, this one's kind of classic. Chuul. I love a good monster moment. Like, anything I can describe as having like dripping saliva, I'm super on board for. And Chuul's deliver. Like, they've got that really classic kind of monster feel, like claws and tentacles. They're mysterious about like whether they're sapient, whether, what their deal is. What I really like though is like their background is that they are built to serve something much worse. In the monster manual, tools are described as servitors created by the aboleth. And after the aboleth, empires crumbled, Chuul still followed their old programming. So they serve these really powerful aberrations. They obey psionic commands, and sometimes they kind of just like lie dormant for centuries, waiting for instructions, waiting to be reactivated. So you can use a Chuul kind of as is, or you can use it to hint at something bigger, some far realm corruption, ancient aboleth, like whatever. They can be a breadcrumb and a boss fight at the same time, which I love. Like I said, though, action economy will take you super far with D&D combat. So ideally you want this guy and like maybe a few mobs. Or maybe two of them, like parent and their child. They are usually solitary, so make them either mates or parent and child. Like they're from the monster manual. At least they aren't like pack creatures, but like it's your game. Do what you want. No, there's no like D&D police that's gonna show up and tell you you're doing it wrong. Number 3, shadow. Shadows mess with parties in a way that feels like personal. Every time they hit, they drain strength beyond just dealing damage. So your tanky frontline fighter who can usually just soak up hits for like 5 minutes straight and did exactly that in the last fight, suddenly can't even lift their weapon. And your spellcasters, a lot of them dump strength entirely, like that's their dump stat. Which means a couple of bad rolls and they're unconscious without even taking a point of damage. And also, if a creature dies to a shadow, they come back as another shadow under the DM's control. So the thing that killed you is now wearing your face and it's still hungry and attacking your party. So that's what I mean when I say shadows feel personal. Like at some point you're just being a dick. but with shadows, like I jokes aside, I feel like they totally kind of shift their tone because just kind of organically they make players sort of second guess their standard operating procedure and their usual attack. It's not really about pure damage output anymore. It sort of demands something a little bit more intentional, a little bit more tactical. Maybe remembering that old +1 sword in the back of holding that no one has really bothered to touch for a long time. My point is, whoever it goes after, it's going to rattle the party a little and forces people to think a little differently about their gear, about their spell choices, and honestly about their survival. That's pretty cool. Number 4, will-o-wisps. I think people kind of forget how fucking mean these things are. They're fast, they go invisible, they're immune to a bunch of common effects, and they feed off of dying creatures like fucking carrion birds. If you're running anything kind of like foggy, dank, atmospheric, moors, swamps, ancient ruins, basically anything in the Feywild, will-o-wisps can turn even just like a slightly tense travel day into a fucking nightmare. Sometimes there's really nothing better than saying to your players, your instincts were right about something not being safe and not being right. It absolutely is not safe in these areas. Because will-o-wisps are predators, but they're not frontline monsters. They're opportunists. Just a few failed perception checks and someone's wandering off into the fog, following light, and now the group has to decide if they want to risk splitting up, if they want to follow that light. Like, what did they do exactly? Now the scout has kind of wandered off, or someone has wandered off. I kind of love that you can drop them as just set dressing in what's basically just a filler travel day. But, or, you know, in some, like, classic spooky location, and suddenly your party's burning resources trying to just land hits on something that goes invisible as a bonus action. So, again, underscoring that point of, like, action economy, being, like, an important part of D&D combat. But anyway, here's hoping someone has something magical that doesn't need line of sight, because they're probably not going to have line of sight. That's what makes will-o-wisps so annoying, and what makes them super dangerous. Their ability to go invisible, but also their ability to sense when a creature, like, is as, like, in their stat block is that creature at 0 hit points. They basically, like, use that to heal themselves. So fundamentally what's happening is they don't just kill, they feed. So yeah, it's a low level creature, and they look kind of beautiful, and they might even look kind of harmless. They're basically just fireflies, right? Nope. In the right context, with even a little bit of terrain advantage, it can absolutely wreck a party that isn't ready for it. Number 5, Quadrones. This is a weird one, and you might reflexively think this weird robot-looking thing doesn't fit in medieval fantasy, but it's exactly that reason why it's such a great one to use. Most players have no context for them. I certainly didn't, and I consider myself fairly into tabletop. So, in the lore, Modrones, or Modros, are beings of pure logic, and they're from a different plane where everything is order and hierarchy and definite and mathematic. Quadrones, which is one of their varietals, are basically like middle managers. Like, they're kind of masters, they're observers. They're not here to fight, ostensibly. They're here because something bigger is in motion. What I love about dropping a Quadrone is that it doesn't make sense right away, and frankly doesn't have to make sense right away. It's not hostile, it's not helpful, it's kind of just here and doing something that probably seems kind of weird, like cataloging rubble, or like measuring the velocity of like falling trap, counting how many doors are open versus how many are closed, and the party kind of has to decide what to do with that, because it isn't a threat, not right now, and it's not a threat until it is. Because maybe they said the wrong thing and suddenly is there to defend itself from a group of threats and calling for backup. Or maybe the party realizes it's relaying everything they say back to something with a lot more power and a lot less respect for free will. Sometimes you don't need the monster to start the fight. Anyway, that is all I have. You'll notice that none of these are high-level monsters or need like a whole custom stat block, but each one can add something kind of strange, interesting, unsettling to your game by just showing up. And for me, that's the real magic of monster design. It's not about power, it's about how the monster affects the tone of the scene and more broadly the bigger story. Anyway, if you like this video, consider subscribing. But if you don't like notifications or subscriptions, I do have a backlog of stuff. I also have an audio-only podcast format with a transcript and a written blog, if that's better for you from like an app accessibility perspective. I'm also at a few APs. Links to all that in the description box. Otherwise, thank you for hanging out. Come see me again soon. Bye.